Celestia and Luna's Completely Average Day by nyronus. Chapter 1, Only Chapter. It was a beautiful morning in Canterlot. The mid-morning sun turned the sky of the early day gold, while its rays gently brushed over the architecture of the city, like the feathers of a Pegasus wing gently resting on the back of a lover or a foal. Luna appreciated the light, of course, but it did not keep her face from being sore for squinting and blinking constantly through a immediately tedious ceremony. As he walked through the shaded pavilion and began the traditional hobnobbing, the feeling of tension around her eyes releasing was like a splash of cool water on a summer day. Luna was awake this day to help Celestia commemorate the opening of a wing of her school for gifted unicorns. When Luna had first returned, Celestia had insisted she attend every such function she could as a way to integrate herself socially. These worked to build up Luna's confidence by being seen and not taken at first glance as a monster, of course. Unfortunately, Luna's shyness and anxiety had done little to allow her to flex her rusty social skills, much to her embarrassment when she took the initiative on Nightmare Might a few months past. Since that incident, Celestia had stopped insisting Luna attend these trivial events, confident her little sister could find her own way. Luna still attended them anyway, mostly to make Tia happy. Celestia liked seeing her sister relaxed and happy in a relatively normal, for them, social situation. Luna would be hard-pressed not to admit that she, herself, enjoyed the simple pleasure of being respected by her fellow ponies without having to terrorize them with an apocalyptic hissy fit. Luna had to repress something of a giggle and a stupid grin at the realization she had grown enough to make light of her own tragedy. No, besides a somewhat uninteresting speech and having to squint into her sister's son for about an hour and a half, the morning was going well for Luna. "You know," Fancy Pants hallelujah went on, "I was an alumnus of this place. It holds some fond memories for me. The knowledge I learned, the ventures I made." He paused to take a drink of light champagne, caught in his pale yellow Tanalgate grip. "The fires those fens started. Do they still have that hole in the back of the Cloverlab wing?" "I would not be the one to ask, my Lord Fancy Pants," Luna replied. "Oh, well, probably not." His face settled into a somewhat wry grin. "I do help Professor Bluebeam recover from the trauma we gave her. Either way, it was a pleasure to speak to you again, Princess of the Light." "The pleasure was all mine, Lord Fancy Pants. And once again, on behalf of my sister, I want to thank you for the generous donations to the school." "In that, the pleasure was all mine," he replied. "Until we meet again, Princess Luna." With that, the unicorn stallion bowed gracefully and walked back to the crowd, his supermodel of a mistress in tow. Luna smiled to herself and scanned the crowd lazily, waiting for another high society philanthropist to walk up and chant with her. Fancy Pants, with the way he could casually be both refined and a little dryly uncouth, was always a pleasure to chat with. The others could raise for polite and witty, the bores with titles. Luna just had to sigh and bear it. It was the price of being social. Something drew Luna out from musing so. As he swept the crowd, she noticed something. Celestia was missing. It took her a second of rapid searching to see the aura of her sister's tail advance around the corner of the building the pavilion was set next to.
"My lord, my dear princess!"
A unicorn stallion suddenly beside her. Luna turned to him and gave a polite smile. "I am so sorry, my lord. I must attend to something presently. Excuse me for a moment," she said, cutting him short before trotting through the crowd after her sister. The crowd was polite enough not to notice. Luna walked out into the beautiful night, but bright sunlight, and out over the grass towards the edge of the new brick building. Peering around the corner, she found her sister finishing a hushed conversation with a light green Pegasus wearing the regalia of a loyal courier. Celestia seemed to finish speaking, and then the Pegasus nodded sharply and bowed, before turning around and taking off into the air. Luna watched, curious, as the Pegasus banked and then flew towards another section of the campus. "Luna?" Celestia asked suddenly. Luna blinked, snapping her head back down to see her older sister with that eternal welcoming calm she always wore on her face. "I am sorry if I intruded, sister," Luna began, walking back behind the wall fully. "I saw your fondness, and was merely curious to what you found to be more pressing than sitting on your rump, receiving the same 3 conversations over and over again." Luna expected her sister to chide her for her sarcasm, or to giggle. Instead, Celestia tilted her head to the side, her face in a slight frown while staring at the ground, as if contemplating something. "It was just some news I received," Celestia began, her serenity returning. "Orcus, Demon Prince of the Undeath and Entropy, has freed himself from Tartarus and is currently leading his undead forces through the Everfree, slaying and enslaving everything in his path. Luna's stomach was kindly informing her, despite other evidence to the contrary, that the entire planet had gone into a tailspin. A chill sweat broke out all over her body, as every single muscle in her tensed for a split second in abject terror. Every last thought was suddenly blasted in her mind as she expected raw shock. Then suddenly, feeling came crashing back to her. She let out a bellowing, let's not mince words here, hysterical laugh. Ha 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 ha! I get it, Luna said, gasping and panting, as her laughter finally died down. I get it. Good one, Tia. I deserve that for poking into your business. I wasn't kidding. Luna looked up from the ground and locked eyes with her sister. Celestia still had the eternal serene smile. Luna's face quickly turned into a sour frown. That's not funny, sister. No, it isn't. Hence why I wouldn't joke about it. Celestia maintained her smile. A chill began crawling down Luna's spine as she began to realize that her sister was not, in fact, kidding. Cuss the stars, she hissed. She stood up then. I hope the Black Wall will be the last we have seen of the Red Fiend. Or rather then, fate is as fate does, Luna. If we act as fast as we can to stop him in his tracks. If he is an apathy gathering troops, that means he does not have his army with him. Luna, we can gather the elements of harmony now, and, using our magic, send our best forces out as a strike force. We can strike him while he's still vulnerable. We can avert this whole disaster before it happens. Now, I think the summons pass, Luna. An ambush! Of course, we should send the rest of your regular troops to help evacuate Ponyville and set up a secondary line of defense on the Everfree border. Perhaps your mages can come in and set some fires. Luna! Luna, who had been staring at the ground while pacing and rattling out plans, stopped suddenly and snapped her head to look up at her sister. Celestia did not shout, so let's just give her a voice of emphasis of command. Her face was still stuck in that now confusedly inevitable siren grin. Celestia gracefully sauntered up to Luna, placed the one wing on her sister's shoulder, beaming serenely. Luna, relax. And with that, Celestia turned away from her sister, retracting the wing in the process, quietly walked away. There was a moment of silence hanging beside the building as Luna was left alone. What? Luna held her head low, and her face twisted into a nervous grin, managed to catch up with her sister at the hors d'oeuvres table. Celestia had the look of a filly like glee as she consumed a light piece of chocolate cake, while some dignitary in a fester from somewhere some pony prattled on about something not nearly as important as the Lord of the Unborn leading a rampage of destruction through the southern borders of Equestria. Luna, her legs not so much walking as nervously jerking from position to position, forced her way through the crowd, and not even stopping to listen for a moment of context, turned on the socialite. I'm so sorry, dear sir, but I have urgent pressing dire business with my dear sweet sister. You'll need to continue your conversation in just the smallest of seconds. That was rude, Celestia replied, still happily enjoying her cake. Then she stood and began moving around the table, a fork planting another bite in her mouth. Luna turned and followed her sister, her lips writhing like snakes to keep her grin forced. Sister! Shouldn't we be talking about something urgent? Nope. Are you sure we shouldn't? Something about our old friend lost in the woods, about how Ponyville is one of our bread baskets, and how contaminations there could have repercussions throughout the whole nation, about how waiting too long lets the apples get eaten. Celestia thoughtfully paused, chewing a bite of her cake. Nope. Luna's neck and face bulged as he physically swallowed a second shout. Luna, I think you've perhaps worried too much. Luna's entire body was shaking at this point. Things aren't like they used to be. Ponyville will be fine. Luna's wings fluttered and her body tensed. Was Celestia out of her mind? Had Luna's 1,000-year leap kept a memory of Orcus's last rampage fresh, while Celestia had forgotten? Was her sister going senile? Most of the partygoers were politely and forcefully ignoring the spectacle Luna was barely keeping from happening. She wanted to grab Celestia and shake her senseless, while using the traditional Canterlot royal voice to pound the sense back in. Celestia's look had turned to one of genuine concern. I think perhaps keeping you up may have been a mistake, Luna. Perhaps you should get some rest. Go, take some time to relax. She suddenly then smiled. Perhaps you will feel better at the ball this evening? The urge to rouse Celestia like a fool's toy was not going away. Yes, sister, Luna finally said. Her grin forced hard enough, that some of the future foals would be born to the stallions and mares who had witnessed would have nightmares about it. "A nap! I think I shall go take one!" With that, Luna stalked out of the party. Celestia frowned, watching her go. If Celestia wasn't going to take this problem seriously, Luna would have to take everything into her own hooves. As he passed down the stone hallway, her head held high, her eyes focused straight ahead. Soldiers moved around her. Nodding as he passed, Luna returned with a similar court nod of respect. She always liked the company of soldiers. No nonsense, and as of this moment, both of them had a mission. Celestia's behavior baffled Luna. She certainly wasn't so nonchalant about Discord's return. And while Orcus may not have posed the same scale of threat, that was no excuse to just let him run loose. Luna was having trouble wrapping her mind around exactly what kind of mindset outside of madness would justify Celestia ignoring this crisis. Last time Orcus had escaped Tartarus, his defeat had come at the cost of thousands of lives, only after he had killed thousands more during his siege of Canterlot. It was probably only the intervention of the dragons that had slowed his escape into the northern lands long enough for Celestia and Luna to run him down and put an end to his reign of terror. Even then, the necromancers he trained and his list generals, those who had escaped during his imprisonment with their Dark Lord, would plague the world for decades to come. His return wasn't something to relax about. In fact, Luna was certain that if she had made a list of things to panic over, this issue would be a fairly easy prick. Luna realized that she had been grinding her teeth and stopped as she turned a corner and marched down the hallway. Ahead, a pair of Pegasus guards stood at the ready before an office door. They both saluted her as she approached.
"Hail Luna, Princess of the Night!"
Both said in unison. "Hail, good warriors!" Luna replied, before turning to the one on the right. "Is General Boss here?"
"Yes, ma'am,"
the Pegasus replied. "Good. I have urgent news and matters of national import to discuss with him." The Pegasus nodded curtly, and then turned and banged on the door. After some brief shouting back and forth, the Pegasus turned back to the door as Luna opened, revealing General Pommel Bass's secretary, a unicorn mare with a cream-colored coat, and a mane striped different shades of brown by the name of Feather Quill. "Right this way, Princess." General Pommel Bass, like Luna had heard of his father, Shield Bass, was a no-nonsense earth stallion. If there was any pony in Canterlot whom Luna could depend on her to help save Ponyville, it would be him. Feather Quill bowed her head as her horn glowed with a brown aura at the knob of General Bass's door. The door swung open, revealing General Bass himself, who looked up and, upon seeing Luna waiting for him, gave a big grin around the cigar he had in his muzzle. He waved her in, and she courteously complied. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, Luna raised her hoof, silencing him. Then she turned around, her horn flaring with silver light, and she closed the door behind her. She then turned and swept the room, with the light billowing around her horn, as General Bass watched an aura of starry darkness boiled around the princess's and knight's horn, before swelling up and washing over the room. General Bass's smile faded.
"A silence spell, huh? Must be serious."
"Gravely." Luna took a moment to sit down and compose herself. She feared less how General Bass would react to the news that Orcus was free, and more how she would explain why she was here personally, instead of him receiving a message from her sister. How her dear sister was no doubt napping in the mid-morning sun before another humdrum diplomatic meeting over lunch, without a care in the world, while Orcus defiled and pillaged his way across Equestria unopposed. She must have shown her frustration somehow, because General Bass was frowning. Luna realized she was grinding her teeth. Again! "General Bass, I will be frank with you. Equestria may be, nay, is in crisis as we speak. Tell me, do they still teach the Blight Wars in Kent and history classes?" General Bass rubbed his chin for a moment, staring at his desk. His brow furrowed and lips twisted.
"I only recall it was the second and last time in her history that Canterlot ever let an enemy to her gates. Well, say for night."
He then stopped, his face screwing up with embarrassment. "No, it is fine. I understand I have made mistakes in the past. But yes, the war was one of the 2 times Canterlot had been seized in her history. The war was instigated by a creature known as Orcus, one of the princes of Tartarus. Vile creatures sealed away long ago. If it helps you comprehend exactly what we are dealing with," Luna went on, "there are many who call me and my sister goddesses of the night and day. Discord was the spirit of chaos and disharmony. To that end, Orcus is the lord of death. Not like the white stallion of your modern folklore, who shepherds ponies to a peaceful rest. Orcus embodies the hateful dead, the rage of those who died unfulfilled. He is the Lord of Envy, and the hateful Red Talon of the Grave. He exists to drag all of Equestria into eternal stagnation of undeath, and bring the world into a state of perfect enteropic ruin. Were he to ever succeed, the sun would die, and the sky would remain an eternal grey. Music, happiness, life itself would vanish from this earth. It would be nothing but him and the waiting of his victims, forever!
I'm guessing I'm not about to like what I'm going to hear next.
Orcus has escaped from Tartarus.
Passing that. I was right.
Gerald Bassett finally swung his head around and let loose a curse that Luna had never heard in her very long life. She felt her ears burn. To think, all of the ways one could bend a goat. When Gerald Bass was done venting a moment or so later, he looked up at Luna's side, his rage spent.
So, what are we going to do about this?
Luckily, Luna said, we may be able to nip this in the bud. Gerald Bass raised an eyebrow suspiciously. Orcus is currently taking his time to gather an army. If he had his forces with him, this would be much harder. If we launch an attack now, we could stop him before he gains any more power. If we could gather our forces, particularly the elements of harmony, and attack now, we could send the feet back to Tartarus before this even begins. Gerald Bass leaned back, resting his chin on one hoof, his lips twisting as he stared at the ceiling.
Sounds reasonable, but...
Suddenly his eyes went wide. He had turned his head straight at Luna, his eyes narrowing and his mouth still in a puzzled frown.
Why wasn't I forwarded this via official channels? Wouldn't Celestia normally call her war ministry together in the face of a crisis? I mean, I appreciate the personal touch, Luna, but it's easier to tell us all at once.
Busted! Luna held his gaze firmly, but the silence dragged uncomfortably. He should know. He had a right to know. No Gerald should be thrust into a war where he can't trust his princess. Plus, the instant he went to Celestia, he would have found out anyway. Honestly, then. Celestia, Luna said, turning her head to the side, breaking the gaze. Doesn't think that this is an issue.
What?
Luna flinched for the force of the shout, her eyes widening in shock. But secretly in her own head, she pranced about like a giddy school filly. For a while, she worried she might have been the one who had gone insane. Praise be to the sun and moon! Some sees reason around here!
What?
Gerald Bass panted.
Has the old horse gone deaf?
Luna would normally be offended by such a crude insult, but she couldn't help but continuing her little psychic happy dance. Luna would just lose it as he heard her favorite general say that about her.
Does he not care that this monster is free? Has he gone senile? Has he gone mad with bloody heat stroke?
I knew, Luna said, thrusting her hoof out. It's like she doesn't even care that Ponyville is about to be raised.
This is beyond excusable. This is... Wait. Ponyville?
Yes! If Orcus despoils our agricultural heart, the famine alone will cost... Luna was interrupted before she could probably go on the angry tirade she had been slowly cultivating all morning by Gerald Palmer Bass's belly guffaw.
Ponyville! I get it!
Yes, Ponyville.
Did he sound relieved? Oh, okay. Now it makes sense.
Oh. Gerald Bass wiped a good full sweat off his brow, then let out a long whistling sigh, and relaxed back behind his desk, closing his eyes and smiling a huge grin. Are you okay, General Bass?
Could be better.
He leaned forward and looked at Luna.
Listen, my princess. Well, those milk drinkers downstairs we call soldiers could use to hike. I'd rather not waste your time sending them out to Ponyville of all places!
At that point, the general was lost, indulging himself in his great billowing laugh. What? Huh? Luna's shawl was left hanging off her face at a rather impressive angle. She realized it was still stuck that way as she was walking away. She couldn't quite remember how she got out into the hallway, or why her feet seemed to be carrying on her own. It wasn't until she wandered into the middle of Canterlot Palace public garden that her brain was in strong enough shape to shoulder the task of comprehending what had transpired. They would say that months later, that her screams of frustration could be heard as far afield as the land of dragons. Luna walked at a slow pace, purposeful stride down the hallways of Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns. Following the footsteps of the Princess of Night was a rather small, middle-aged unicorn stallion. He had pale tan fur, a somewhat unkempt short black mane which clasped with his long, unkempt black tail, and blue eyes would start every which way as his head and neck jerked around like a bird. His kitty mark was a geometric red star inside his circle. He was Solomon Bird, resident professor of demonology at the school. He was trying his best not to impose on her sovereign majesty by staring at her in awe.
Your majesty.
He finally asked after several minutes of awkward silence. Yes?
Does this have anything to do with the banshee that was howling in the palace garden this morning?
The princess of the night stopped short. Professor Bind was watching her entire face seem to clench at once, as if she was experiencing a great deal of suffering. After a moment, she relaxed and returned to her deadpan stare, continuing forward at the same pace. No.
Oh.
The silence continued. They walked on for several moments before Luna veered off slightly to her straight path, turned towards a door marked Faculty Lounge. In the silence of the hallway, Solomon Bind could hear the sound of a mare and stallion talking very quietly to themselves. Luna knocked heavily on the door. Professor Thunderhead, are you within? Yes. A voice answered. Who is it? Wait, is that you, Princess? It is. I will be right out. There was some more low talking and some shuffling, followed by the sounds of footsteps on tile. After a few seconds, the door handle glowed a burning orange, the door swinging open, and Professor Loom Thunderhead spread out. He was a massive, blue-furred, barrel-chested unicorn stallion with a grizzled white mane and beard. His cutie mark, an arcing ball of flame with 3 concentric circles of lightning radiating from its tail, marked him as a war wizard. Not only that, but Loom Thunderhead was in fact Celestia's chief war wizard. Solomon's eyebrows perked. Something was up. Sorry about that. Ever since a student prank of a couple of decades back, Professor Beam has had a nervous condition, and those dragons running at the palace set her off. Wait! Dragons? I thought it was a banshee! Professor Thunderhead shrugged his shoulders. It sounded like dragons running to me. Wrapped up as they were in speculation, neither unicorn knows the supreme effort it was taking Luna not to grind her teeth to dust. Gentlemen! She interjected. Perhaps too firm. Is there anywhere, pray tell, that we can talk in private? The 2 unicorns looked at each other. My office is closer, Professor Thunderhead said, speaking up first. Very well then. I'll lead the way, Professor Thunderhead. We have urgent matters to discuss. Luna and the 2 unicorns entered Professor Thunderhead's somewhat spacious office. Professor Thunderhead led the way, followed by Luna and Professor Bind. Luna moved behind his desk, while Luna and Solomon sat down in front of it. He stopped short, though. He turned and grinned sheepishly. I normally sit in this chair to lecture students. I would feel awkward to entertain the Princess of the Night in it. Princess, would you like to sit there? Luna rolled her eyes at the notion, but if it made the old wizard feel better. The 3 ponies circled around Thunderhead's massive mahogany desk, with Solomon Bind taking Luna's cushion, and Luna taking Professor Thunderhead's massive backed couch, with immediately posed a problem for Luna's physiology. I do not think this will work. Why not, Princess? Luna fluttered her wing, her right one pinned by the back of her seat. Oh, shuffle, 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 shuffle. I do feel awkward making you sit in a chair for disobedient coats and fillies. Maybe we shift the seat like this. Shuffle, 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 shuffle. Now it's far more uncomfortable than before. I don't care about the corner right now, Professor Thunderhead. Take your seat! Shuffle, 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 shuffle. Now it's more uncomfortable for me. Maybe if I... Oh, for the love of Orion! Shuffle, 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 shuffle. Professor Solomon Bind said, smiling perfectly center in his seat, which dwarfed him in size.
You sure I should be the one who...
Yes! Both Luna and Professor Loom said exasperated in unison. Luna dropped her head inside, collecting herself. Now, perhaps we can discuss the matter at hand. Both of you are no doubt curious and perhaps suspicious why I would want to speak to both Chief Ethoka and Chief Demonologist of the school.
Tartarian Biologist.
What?
Tartarian Biologist is the proper name for my field.
Well, why?
Well, a few of the redeemed Tartarians living in Equestria found the term demon to be something of a loaded phrase. It has all sorts of negative connotations, so they began a campaign to change the way the phrase was used, boycotting anyone who used the phrase demon, even though it's an ethically neutral scientific term. It was all very silly, and then our previous headmaster felt it was less offensive to just call them Tartarians. But that was even sillier, since there is also more than one type of creature in Tartarus. I know, for instance, this offended the Yugos and the Batsu who...
Luna threw her huff. The target biology! Whatever! We have more important things to discuss! Professor Pine slid to the couch dejected, looking even smaller now. There's a reason I have called both of you here. I have need of both your talents. She looked down gravely. Equestria is impaired. The two unicorns leaned in. Loom Thunder had a look of stoic determination, while Solomon Bying leaned forward, a look of anticipation on his face. Orcus walks the earth once again! Professor Thunderhead's face darkened. A dread fought with sorrowism. Professor Bying's face, on the other hand, went rapidly from slack jaw to wide-eyed shock, to wide-eyed childlike glee, to dread, then finally sent on intense curiosity, it seemed. He is currently without an army. No doubt he could get past Cerebus without alerting us to the attempt. But as you both know, for him, building one is no problem. I believe, and what I need for you, Professor Thunderhead, is that if we could teleport a force of our strongest war mages directly to Orcus, and strike him before he could build an army, we could maim him and send him fleeing back to Tartarus. What I need for you, Professor Blind, is any information you can provide me on his powers or weaknesses that may come to light in the last 1,000 years, and also any information on necromancy that may have been discovered in that time.
Of all the times to be alive.
Professor Solomon Bying was rocking back and forth on his flank like a spastic, broken metronome.
I mean, yes, of course, Princess. Whatever I can. You think one of the Abyssal Princesses here. Think of the opportunity to study. This will be a great day for science.
Professor Thunderhead was not so enthusiastic. In fact, as he stared at Luna, his eyes narrowed and his frown deepened. Why was the War Council not called? Celestia believes that this threat does not require a full mobilization to handle, and calling the War Council may cause panic. As I said, I think mages of your caliber on our side, backed by magic, can strike him before he is ready to fight and start this battle before it starts, and leave before we suffer any losses if we can't. Plus, as you know, an infantry who dies in this fight would only become another foot soldier for him. If we fail in this, I think it would only be because he would be too powerful for any first strike team to handle, and even our attack would illustrate the level of threat and show him enough to buy time the army for full mobilization. Lily had to smile herself as he finished. She was rather proud of that speech. None of it was technically a lie. Professor Thunderhead seemed to weigh the options. What you say may be right, but it'll still be dangerous. Most of the books on that war were old and vague, but Orcus is supposed to be a creature of phenomenal power. We would most likely need to have to retreat the instant we fail to kill him in the opening blows. I don't want to belittle your power, Princess, but I do not think even you would have the power to protect us and open the way to retreat simultaneously. Otherwise, you would carry this out yourself. Oh, that's true. You know, some of the books state that during the battle of Marathon, he opened his mouth and breathed a blast of magic into the air that turned into a great storm, which wiped out the Pegasi during their battles.
Can he really do that?
How about how he convinced the Harpies to work for him? Did he really turn the blood of 1,000 points into liquid gold? What about... The storm was already there. No, and we have more important things to discuss! We could potentially run a series of hit and run attacks, Luna asked. Would such a thing be possible, or would that drain you 2 months? Luna seemed to weigh her options. It might work, but I would only have enough strength for a few tries. I would need to rest between each try, which is a danger in and of itself. Time is of the essence, Tentercoats. Professor Bryant asked, why is time so important? Because if we do not act swiftly, then Ponyville will burn! There was a long silence after that statement. Far, far too long. Professor Thunderhead simply rolled his eyes and said, "Oh," quietly to himself, while Professor Vine simply looked heartbroken, sank back into his massive seat. Lou then began shifting around on his cushion, before picking up his left forehoof and giving it a once-over, a somewhat annoyed look on his face. At the 45-second mark, Professor Vine was slowly slipping from dejection to a barely disguised rage and frustration. It's something that was ruin everything! Solomon? Professor Thunderhead sighed wearily. Calm down. No! You calm down! It's not like every time you get a bright idea for a bigger fireball spell, somebody wheels the door shut. Those 6 bears have ruined every decent research opportunity that has sprung up in the last 2 years! Someone by was physically shaking at this point, his voice cracking and hoarse from yelling. I could have proved Professor Circle wrong. That Discord was a Tentarian. I just wanted to see Orcus. Solid Bite finally squeaked up. He then began falling like a foal. Professor Thunderhead gave a weary sigh, stood up, turning his attention to the dumbstruck princess. You should come with me outside. He then walked towards the door, opening it gently with telekinesis. When Luna couldn't tear her eyes from the spectacle of a grown colt rolling around on his back in a chair 2 sizes too big for him, his side legs kicking wildly in the air while he bawled like a baby, Professor Loom gave her a gentle telekinetic tug on her shoulder, breaking the spell. She turned around, a look of helpless confusion on her face. Professor Thunderhead merely swung his head to the side, indicating she should do the same. Luna very slowly stood up, trying not to look at the spectacle of Professor Bind, lest he be entranced again. Then very slowly walked out, her eyes wide and mouth hanging open all the while. Professor Thunderhead closed the door behind her. You'll have to forgive Professor Blind. He gets frustrated easily. Luna continued her fish-eyed stare. Professor Loon sighed. This was going to be more difficult than he thought. Listen, you have to understand. Most of the supernatural zoology and biology department have been having a tough time these last 2 years. Discord gets released, allowing them the chance to answer some long-standing questions about spirits and demons, and poof, back to stone. Professor Goodfellow was particularly upset after that changeling incursion. No one had seen a changeling in a very long time, and no one thought to capture one to study. The first mature dragon sells in Equestria, and then is driven off in the same week. You have to understand. No one knew there was a Hydra in the Everfree until it got disturbed a year and a half ago, and those girls rattled it so bad it shifted its territory, and now no one knows where it went. We understand the elements are doing their best to Equestria, but I can understand how these can be grating. And Professor Bind is more sensitive than most. He's had a hard time of it, and it gets on his weak constitution. He's going to miss out on the career opportunity of the century. Try not to judge him. At this point, a dull thumping could be heard on the other side of the wall, as Professor Bind began fruitlessly banging his head against it, cursing with each dull thud. Too harshly, anyway. As for the plan, Professor Lou went on, I didn't realize we'd be fighting over Ponyville. I can see now why the princess didn't think it would be a pruding issue. It is my suggestion we wait for the dust to settle before doing anything else. I don't want to risk the lives of good stallions when our problem will be most likely over by summertime. But! I have to go calm him down before he bores another hole through the wall. And with that, the door to Professor Loon's office swung open, and the stallion marched in. Luna reared up and opened her mouth to order him to stay right where he was. Then, when he suddenly stopped, took a step back, and gave the princess a look as if he was considering something. Do you think you could tell the elements to leave an arm or a horn or something for him? He had trouble reading her reaction. No? Well, think about it at least. He then turned, walked into his office, and shut the door behind him. Luna stared at the spot where the unicorn had been, then at the door, then at the floor, then straight ahead. She then struck herself across her face with her hoof. Hard. Yep, pain. That really did happen. She began shaking violently as she took off down the hallway at a rapid trot. Something had to be done. There had to be some pony, somewhere, who was still sane in this day and age, who had the resources to help her save Equestria! Luna learned the true value of optimism that day. She had visited every official she could think of to help with the crisis. Then any official she rationalized could help with the crisis. Then any official who would see her. By the end of it, she was weeping and pleading with a janitor, who was still trying to have trouble figuring out what a porcus was. She could have sworn that after a while, they began warning each other of her approach. This wasn't helped when, seeing the captain of the scouting corps, he hurled himself out the window, while she watched from outside his office. He was fine, of course, Pegasus and all that, but that did nothing to help her confidence, or her waiting handle on her emotions. She now sat, draped across the railing like a great blue owlbear-skinned rug, staring towards the eastern horizon as the sunset ball went on in the chamber behind her. Luna wanted to take this time to try and figure out some sort of plan or countermeasure, but Celestia's aides had swarmed her and almost bodily dragged her there. As confused and distressed as she was in no shape to fight back. Some part of her brain was mildly annoyed that after forcing her here, Celestia wouldn't be bothered to appear. But Luna was beyond caring about minor facts of hypocrisy. The Sunset Ball was another of the endless balls and functions of the Canterlot elite. This one to celebrate the young love of summer, where all of the princes and princesses of old nobility gather to dance, court, and generally have a good time of things. It was meant to be a nod to the fertility of summer, and a settling of ties before winter of adulthood, or something like that. Luna could not give it a fig at the moment. All she could think about after the events of the day was about how, at the rate of things going, Orcus would be entering Canterlot in a week. There's my eye. She watched the young dukes and countesses of the ball gather in the streets, tossing wreaths of roses at his cloven hooves, smiling and waving, and offering him tea and crumpets, just before Orcus would open his maw, and spew boiling black and green cloud of death magic upon them. Luna's fantasy, the insistent nobility of Canterlot spent their last agonizing moment recommending their dentist to Orcus for his bad oral hygiene before being reduced to a pools of steaming necrotic ooze. Luna sighed deeply and shook her head, trying to clear the images. Thoughts like that wouldn't help to solve the problem. She had to be strong, and to keep her head level. She had to, because it was looking like she was the only one interested in saving Equestria at all. Had Celestia really gone mad? Luna had tried to find her late in the afternoon, but none of her aides could give her a straight answer. One said she was talking with the Griffin's ambassador. Another told her she was off taking it with the Dragonflight. It honestly sounded more and more like Celestia was avoiding her, and as Luna shoved that thought aside, it took all of her power to keep her from grinding her teeth. Again! And so, Luna sat there, staring at the grass, while the lawn below, stewing in her frustration and depressing for some time. It wasn't until some pony spoke that she realized she was no longer alone on the balcony. My dear Princess Luna, what is wrong? Luna turned to find a willily creamed unicorn mare staring the balcony with her. It took Luna a second to recognize her or even remember her name. Fleur-de-Lis. She was Fancy Pants' wife! Regardless, Luna shoved her side of frustration for the moment and turned to fully face her subject. Nothing is the matter. We are simply enjoying the party by ourselves. We are enjoying it by ourselves, Fleur giggled. Luna realized that she was being made fun of, that she had fallen back into antiquated speech patterns. Luna was somewhat thankful that her dark coat hid her blush of embarrassment. We have had a trying day. Luna twisted. Fleur giggled again. And I am trying to enjoy the twilight, that is all. Why enjoy the twilight when you have a wonderful party? It is a celebration of love, Floridian, or our princesses above such moral concerns. Luna had a sudden urge to point out that based on the lineage he had studied, and some studies of the marriage habitats of Canterlot nobility through the ages, and some maps he had run, due to the sheer number of years he had been around, there was a probably 1 in 10 chance that Flora was in fact her great to the nth degree granddaughter, and a 15% chance she was Celestia's. 5% chance of both. Luna let out a huff and pushed that thought aside. We are... Luna's face scrunched up tightly. I am not in the mood for romance or celebration. I would not be here were it not for my sister's irreligiosities, understatement of millennium. So please, I wish to be alone. What's the matter, Princess? Why are you, if you forget the pun, so blue? Celestia and her entire cabinet were mad. The Lord of Undeath and Decay was about to kill and enslave hundreds of ponies, and potentially start a famine which could kill thousands more. The window with which rapid action would have nipped the crisis in the bud relatively breathlessly was rapidly closing. Luna's right hoof ached for no adequately explained reason. It was muggy out. Pick one. It is a personal matter. I would rather leave it be. Oh, very well, Princess. Luna had turned away to stare off to the side, trying to tune out the conversation that she could give back, not focusing on anything useful. So it took her a moment to realize that Flora had drifted off. That, in fact, the entire ball had gone silent. Luna turned and saw Flora staring black-faced towards the south. Luna turned her head, and her entire face scrunched as she frowned. Nothing but the red light of sunset was there. When the realization struck Luna into action, quite literally she bounded into the hall. The entire room was lit with a baleful red light as the fire to the south surged. No! Luna shoved the derelict Italian aside. She began running for the southern doors. The damn pony just stood there, slack-jawed. No! No, 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 no! As Luna flared her wings, and a mighty flat launched herself over the red sun cloud, her horn flared with a silver-blue light. As she landed, the door swung open at her command, revealing the bright red cyst on the horizon. No! 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 The red light flared, almost like it had been waiting for her. She could feel it then. Only an echo. But the fact that she could even feel that much at this distance was horrifying. Abyssal magic. Necromancy. Orcus had begun his war on Equestria unopposed. Luna had failed. Someone was screaming, and it took Luna time to realize it was her. She tried to stop and regain even the faster control of herself, but the instant she closed her muscles, she began sniffling and weeping. Soon the silence began filling with sounds, whispers, murmurings, dread, fear. So a small part of Luna took grim satisfaction in that fact, even though it was too late for Ponyville. Some pony, somewhere, finally understood. Maybe there was hope for Equestria yet. Princess, a stallion asked, arguably raising his hoof and letting it hang. Instead of placing a comforting hoof on the royal shoulder, would break decorum. Princess, what happened? We failed, she said finally. I failed. I did not act, and now doom comes to Ponyville, and soon all be Oh, Ponyville! The stallion let out an almost hysterical laugh of relief. He then turned and waved to the ponygoers. Hey guys, it's okay! It's just Ponyville! The tents in the room shattered instantly. Some let out laughter. Some rolled their eyes in frustration. Many just chuckled nervously in sigh of relief. Ha ha ha! The stallion went on, quite literally ripping Luna with an elbow. Good one, princess. Sweet Celestia, Ponyville. He then tried forward and leaped to the air, flying out over the crowd of assembled ponies, revealing about in confusion on the lawn in front of the bathroom. Hey guys, don't worry! It says Ponyville! We're fine! Tell Everypony! Luna watched as the ponies physically lost all tension in their bodies in an instant. Very soon they were chatting and joking, much like the partygoers behind her. She was dimly aware through the haze of shock and horror that someone behind her was shouting something about property damage. Alright, Everypony, a nasally voice yelled. You know the drill. Name 1,000 and the ponies just gets the closest without going over wins support. Blue blood, a voice replied. Why do you always bet so low when we play this game? Please, the first speaker replied. The most foul thing in Ponyville lives in neither a nest nor a cave, but a dress shop. I should know. I dated her. Guffaws of laughter ensued. Princess! First voice was suddenly spoke up from behind her. If it was Ponyville who bothered you, you should have told me. You should really have more faith in the elements. Claire took a step back, her hind hoof shaking as a forehoof reached touched her muzzle. Instead of Luna's sudden glare as she turned around was in fact weathered the flesh from her face. Luna stared down at her for several seconds. Then without a word, her horn flashed with silver light, and Luna flashed in a clap of thunder. Pigs the stallion landed next to Flora. Huh. What was her problem? Was something actually wrong? The last day rays of a waning sun was Luna's company. She sat, perched on the domed tower, clutching the thin spire raised from its tip like some great midnight blue gargoyle. Her horn glowed as her expression remained unchanging. Her lips pressed into a thin line save for their corners, which were tugged violently downward by the muscles in her cheeks. Her eyes left ahead, narrowed with a look of grim determination. So it was like that, with no pomp or circumstance, that Luna brought an end to Ponyville's last day. And the last piece of Equestria would know for some time by her reckoning. She had come here to be alone. She had tried to use her senses to try and read the ley lines of magic to grasp what had happened in Ponyville. But it was a futile gesture. By the time she had teleported up here, whenever that red light signal was ending, and all the ley lines did nothing, but shuddered uselessly under her touch, with the echoes of whatever had happened to the south, and the sheer, unnatural, metaphysical weight Orcus and his unholy legion placed on the fabric of magic. Still, though, the lack of a rainbow-colored dawn and her ability to sense Orcus's presence told her all she needed. Luna shuddered and grasped the spire tightly. Her chest tightened again. She held back the pain as best she could. She couldn't assume they were dead. Not yet. They were resourceful, but her mind couldn't help but turn to the worst. Piggy Pie, Fluttershy, Twilight. That last name burned like a brand on her heart, and a new emotion surged through her. Rage. She wished nothing more than to rip Celestia out of whatever hole the bitch had crawled into, and dragged her by her magical might to the wrecked Ponyville's no left ass. She wanted to jam her sister's muzzle into the blood-sucked mud and scream at her, "Look at this! Look at what your flippancy has cost us!" She wanted to keep screaming until she ceased to exist, until this feeling in herself vanished in a puff of smoke, like some flame that burned far too hard and far too fast. Luna let out a low, throaty noise. Somewhere between a groan and a scream, her body shuddered as the sound ended, only for her to inhale and make it again and then again. After finally spent herself physically for the moment, her mind empty enough for her to think clearly. Something had to be done by Celestia. They would have to wait, though. Orcus was the immediate problem. Unless Celestia was truly insane, there was no way she would idly sit by now. Whether or not Luna needed to make sure the power changed hands in Equestria was an issue for another day. Orcus needed to be stopped first. Luna had doubted her ability to handle this task on her own before. The question of whether her anger made her lose her self-doubt, or she merely no longer had the capacity to fear for her life occurred to her. But Luna no longer cared. A plan began hatching in her head, and all fell into place nicely. She might or might not be able to stop Orcus, but she could cripple him dearly. And while she not be able to save Ponyville, she would most certainly avenge it. The commander of the Night Guard visited the place. His old drill sergeant and any self-respecting member of the Immaculate Day Guard would chew him out for that slight twitch. But, sunburned him, something was wrong here. Luna had demanded he assemble every member of the on-duty Pegaside Night Guard to this open space high above Canterlot Castle's battlements in battle formation. She was there waiting for them, and once he assembled, she sat for a long time, staring at them. Then she gotten up and began pacing up and down the line. Her grim stare seemed to pick each guard in turn and picking him apart. Commander Eagle-Eye had not spent much personal time with the princess, but this behavior seemed out of place and a little more frightening. It was hard to stay settled when one of your two commanders-in-chief was staring at you with the same calculated measurements and purpose, and the same amount of basic empathy, as if they were looking at a knife to decide if it was proper to want man as a kill. Commander Eagle-Eye twisted again when he realized how close to the mark that metaphor might have been. After what seemed like forever, Luna came to a stop at the center of the line, not 10 feet away from Commander Eagle-Eye. "I would never ask another stallion or mare to die for me," she said, "but," she went on, "I would ask a stallion or mare of honor to keep their promises. You all agreed to protect, with your life if necessary, the life of a royal person. You all also agreed to protect, with your life if necessary, the safety and security of the nation of Equestria. Unfortunately, today is the day you must make due on both these promises." She turned and looked off the south. "There, this evening at sunset there was a red light in the sky. That light was no doubt the last sight of Ponyville many will ever see for a very long time." Murmuring ran through the guards. "Ponyville, your majesty, could, if anything, taken Ponyville—" Luna snapped, locking eyes with the poor guard. That same meticulous stare reduced the rest of his sentence to mutterings and gasps, and then the entire guard to silence. Luna let that silence hang. "Yes, a terrible monster has taken Ponyville, a monster that I intend to either slay or maim this very evening. I do not know if this is a battle we can win, but it is one I must fight now, or the doom of Ponyville will creep over closer all the faster to your own friends and family."
"Princess Luna!"
Commander Eagle-Eye finally had the courage to interject.
"Should this not be the mission for the whole army?"
"The army would be no help." Luna whirled on him, slamming stone with a hoof. "Nor will the bases, or the Air Force, nor even my sister." Each name was punctuated with another slam. The last one said he flocks the stone scaring and skipping across the whole space. "This is a fight that must happen now, and must now either be done by myself alone or with your help. But no other will come, not anymore." Luna's cold stare suddenly simmered with rage. "I do not know what we can do, but I do know that if I go alone, it will be the end of me. Whether that happens, it's your choice." Luna then turned, and without another word, marched towards the battlements.
"Princess!"
Eagle-Eye stretched out a hoof.
"Wait! We have orders to keep you from leaving this night."
Luna lifted one hoof onto the battlements and turned to look at him. No more rage or calculations in her teal eyes. Simply a wait. Fast, unstoppable, unreasonable wait. "I know." With that, Luna's wings flared open in a blinding flash of white light. Then Eagle-Eye's vision recovered. He saw nearly stopped his heart. Luna had changed. She seemed larger than before. Her wings had certainly gotten larger and sharper, more like a hawk's than a pegasus. Her fur had turned soot black, and her entire body was covered in shining metallic blue armor, which glittered unnaturally in the starlight. Almost as it reflected above all others. Her mane transformed, no longer a gently flowing stretch of night sky, but now a rushing river, or flame of surly white and black cosmos. Yet of all things, her eyes remained unchanged. It was in that moment Eagle Eye finally understood now. Even after 1,000 years of history to fade into everything but myth, Pony still feared the mare in the moon. Luna then spoke. Her voice was not loud, but Eagle Eye could still feel it rumbling in the hollow of his chest. Try and stop me. Luna then turned, her wings stretching into the sky as silver lightning danced across her feather tips. A wild cracking filled the night. Without another word, she swung her wings down, and with a crack of thunder, launched herself like a great silver spirit to the night at supernatural speed. Commander Eagle Eye twisted on the spot, torn between his duties and his orders, while Luna rapidly vanished into the night air. Shit! He shouted, and launched himself after her. The rest of the night guard went with him. The night air rushed past Luna with each mighty flap of her wings, her ears full of the snapping roar of the wind. Out of the corner of her eye, she watched the purple-clad figures of the night guard leap into the air. A grin, perhaps too predatory, spread across her face as she slowed her pace, allowing her men to catch up. After half a minute, Eagle Eye and the rest of the soldiers fell into formation behind her.
Orders, Your Highness!
Eagle Eye shouted over the wind. Without speaking, Luna arched her back as her horn flared with silver, black, and blue light. A pulse of magic washed over her, spreading wide as it fell behind her, washing over her men. Suddenly the world seemed to lurch as the landscape flashed by much more rapidly than it should, given how fast they were going. Princess! A spell! She shouted without turning around. Teleporting all of you would be draining, and leave us vulnerable for the few seconds it would take for us to get our bearings and move. We are very likely to lose the element of surprise. The creature we seek to destroy, and its brood, do not rest or sleep and have inevitable power. The first seconds will be critical.
You have a plan, then?
Of course! Luna then took a moment to focus, using her magic to amplify her voice, so all soldiers could hear her over the roar of wind. We will be approaching the ruins of Ponyville in a very short amount of time, and when we come within striking distance, our timing will be critical. I must warn you, though, you will be fighting monsters most foul. You will see sights unnatural and unnerving. I expect you to hold your courage, though. Its faltering could mean the very end of any and all of us. There was a low orange light on the southern horizon now. There would not be much time left. She felt a surge of pride at the stoic silence of the men behind her. Whether they survived or not, they would be heroes this day. There will be two enemies of import that we must fear above all others there. One will be a creature not unlike a giant red-skinned minotaur, with the face of a wild boar and wings of a dragon growing from its back. That creature is mine to fight, and to kill the lot of you with no effort. Your weapons will not even harm it. Do not engage it unless I rally you to my side. That is an order. Your targets will look like unicorns, often with a skeletal frame and pale coats. And they have flesh at all, and are not merely walking skeletons. Do not attempt to fight these creatures normally. You ought to break into teams of 4 and attempt to engage these monsters 4 against 1. Attempt to sever their horns, or failing that, rip them limb from limb. Princess, they are liches, neither living nor dead. A spear to the chest would be no more damaging or bothersome to them as a hard shove would be to yourself. They have access to terrible magic, though. We must all act with speed, precision, and harmony. If we do not behead this force swiftly, you will assault our attack and repulse us with supernatural power and brutality. We are not fighting ponies, but monsters. They show them no mercy, for none will be given. This will be a moment in history, remembers, men, for one reason or another. Let us give the history books a reason to remember it well, and the devil's nightmares as they scream flying back to the Tartarus! Understood?
Yes, ma'am!
Good then, attack on my signal, and good luck! As the orange glow grew brighter and brighter, Luna's horn pulsed, lessening the spell slowing her approach. She banked to the right, and as one movement her soldiers followed. As they got closer to the orange glow, Luna then banked to the left, taking her force in an arc around the small town. As they came in, she finally got to see Ponyville for the first time since Nightmare Night. And the sight filled her with rage. Ponyville was in chaos. Everywhere, Luna's eyes fell. She saw wreckage and fire. She watched as the pale shadows of Orcus' liches flitted through the night air on wings, no doubt meant to mock her own form. Blasting dark magic into the streets below, ponies, living ones, were chased through the streets by packs of ghouls. The air was filled with the scent of smoke and rot, and thick with dirty humidity. Shouts filled the air. Luna banked harder to the left, tightening her spiral around the town, beginning to rise into hot air. As much as she wanted to dive into the fray and save those ponies, she needed to keep her priorities. She was here to take the serpent by the throat, and lo and behold, as she crested her rise, she could see the serpent's head. 3,000 years of time and half a mile of space could not dim the hire of Orcus for Luna. He loomed like a great red gargoyle in the center of Ponyville. What details she couldn't make out at this distance, her memory filled. His towering height, his jagged and crooked yellow tusk, his great, loose corpulent skin, the color of dried blood, dotted with black necrotic lesions, and glimmering with a sheen of sliming rot. The jagged yellow talons coming from his flat, bloated digits. The black, rotten pits where eyes should be, and the beady puss-green points of flame which stared from those corroded depths, unreadable, save for the look of supreme malice and glee. When at once as the monster took a swig of some drink it had in a great corpulent fist, and threw his back in a laugh swallowed by dissonance and cacophony. So this was funny to him? A game? Very well then. Luna wasn't sure he would die laughing. Now! She shouted as he went into a dive. Her horn flashed as the bubble of magic around her dissolved, and the air was suddenly filled with violence and motion. Batwing Night Guard diving in on the stunned liches, people shouting from the streets, smoke billowing as the beating of wings stirred the air, and the center of it all was Luna. For a moment she felt herself free fall, and then, with an expert turn of her wings, her lazy descent turning instantly into a powerful dive. The ground rushed towards her, and with another turn her wings she leveled out. Then, with a mighty flap and a blast of magic, she rocketed forward. Luna grinned a predatory sneer as her horn flared, silver fire watching over her form. Another flap, another blast of her magic, her speed increased again. Time seemed to slow. Her focus narrowed on her quarry. Luna let out a story in her mind. Orcus, Prince of the Undead, was sitting there, slack-jawed. He didn't teleport out of the way. He didn't throw up a shield. The damn fool wasn't even attempting to roll to the side. Time seemed to slow down as she got closer, and the silver fire from magic whirled around her, and a blaze of raw destructive power. There was no stopping her now. Nothing Orcus could do to avoid his doom. She let out almost a giddy whoop of triumph. It was perfect. Better than perfect. She was going to save Equestria, all by herself, and bring low an ancient and terrible foe all in one swoop. She didn't need Tia, or the army, or anyone else. She had done it. Everything was perfect. Until something drifted into her field of vision. Something the same pink and yellow colors as summer solstice marshmallow candy. Something with great big teal eyes. Something which was waving its hooves and telling her to stop. Something which was dead set in her path. Luna had two thoughts simultaneously. Calling them thoughts is a bit of an oversimplification. They were in fact a complicated strings of emotions, images, colors, and words. But they more or less boiled down to two simple concepts. Nope, sorry, too late. And if I don't drop the magic field, I'm going to kill Fluttershy. Luna had a choice to make, and with a wail of frustration, she released the magic around herself, and crashed headlong into the Pegasus. And the world was suddenly spinning. Something was strangling Luna. Another something was screaming directly into her exposed ear, and Luna had trouble telling if it was her this time or not. Luna quickly lost altitude, as something kept bashing her wings with every flap. Something was also kicking her over and over in the knees and guts. Luna became aware then, vaguely, she was about to hit the roof of a house. Instinctively, she curled into a ball, some part of her still trying to protect the horrible, kicking, screaming thing was just crushing her trachea. She did not hear the crash, nor did she really feel it, although some part of her took note of the oppressive angle at which she ricocheted off the roof, and of the visibly impressive shower of singles which plummeted in her wake. At this point, Luna's spin was far lazier, and she got a decent view of Ponyville. It has looked somewhat charming by firelight. She would have to tell Twilight for the next... And then Luna crashed into something. Something maroon and greasy. Something was part of Luna registered and let out a grunt of surprise and shock. Something that was unfortunately bouncy. The force of the impact rippled through the object and, as it generally must, straight back to Luna, propelling her in the opposite direction. Somehow, the screaming thing on her neck loosened its grip, and both she and it smashed into the ground together. Then, a warm, foul-smelling liquid crossed her over like a tidal wave. Luna pulled herself from the mud. The liquid stung her eyes, and the smell was revolting all around. Still, she could make out the pastel yellow heap a few feet away. Luna, shaking and nearly slipping into mud and hot liquid, dragged herself over to it. Why? She asked Fluttershy. She couldn't hear her own voice. Just some sort of incessant ringing. Why? Fluttershy mouthed something to Luna. I'm sorry? Why? Luna asked, turning to look behind her. Like a great hiding reap, there was Orcus, rising to his haunches and, for some reason, massaging the left side of his chest. There was something else, though. It was hovering just behind Orcus. It would have been next to his shoulder where he had been sitting. Something which Luna had trouble making out, dazed and irritated as they were. It was something blue, something surrounded in a corona of every color. As they realized something, she focused harder. Something roasting a marshmallow? What? She turned her eyes out in the street, glancing from the town square. She watched as a pair of mares, one cream-colored, the other mint green, were chased by a horde of ghouls, only for them to stop short in front of the wreckage of the house. She watched as the mares turned on the horde of the undead and began gesticulating wildly. In response, the zombies turned and fell upon the house, with nails and hammers, fixing it. Huh? Movement caught her eye and she watched, in a daze, as three ghostly white liches landed on the home she was dimly aware had been part of her unfortunate flight path. She watched as their horns glowed with an unholy black light, as beams of writhing live darkness began blasting onto the roof, repairing the damage. She watched as one rolled its eyes in frustration, mouth moving. The other seemed to chuckle darkly. How? Then suddenly she was jerked around. There they were, her friends. Twilight, Applejack, Rarity, Pinkie Pie. Rainbow Dash followed soon after, fiercely roasting her marshmallow as she landed. The round smile pen opened silently. Where was that universal buzzing coming from? But their faces were marked by Ivy's concern. Luna, though, looked past them, to the great red figure, etched in horror and nightmare, who was still rubbing his chest tenderly. Orcus stood there, not meeting her eyes. He was staring at the ground. Sheepishly! Then suddenly magenta light flared, and Luna was hit with a wave of magic. She didn't realize he was even having suddenly vanished. Most importantly, sound came rushing back to her. Princess! Princess! Twilight said, shaking her, forcing Luna to focus back down on her. Are you all right? Twilight's mouth was parted slightly. Her cheeks rose, but the skin around her eyes tight with concern. Luna sat there, as wobbly and loose as a Philly's rag doll. Her eyes bulging from their sockets and staring at the little unicorn in much the same manner. She finally registered what that god-awful stink was. Princess? Twilight asked, softly looking almost on the verge of tear. It was tea. Please, are you okay? She was covered in tea. Twilight started shaking her. Why was she covered in tea? Princess! Princess! Please! Why was she covered in tea? Princess? What in the 12 layers of Tartarus has happened here? The ponies clustered around, slowly flinched back. Twilight's face still broke into a smile. Oh, thank the stars! She said, clapping her hands together, and spraying Luna with flecks of tea mud. Oh, her eyes twitched. You're okay! Twilight then flung herself at Luna's midsection. What happened here? Rarity said, chuckling, tossing her mane. Doesn't it disgust when these things happen sometimes? Oh, man, it was so crazy! Pinkie Pie exclaimed, suddenly leaping from Rarity. First, Orky was all... Pinkie's face suddenly crossed into a stubbornly good impression of a face. Become my stalls! Thralls, dear, Rarity corrected. Oh, yeah, anyway. Become my thralls in life or death! That's when the witches... Listen, Circle came. Witches showed up! Yeah! Rainbow Dash interjected, launching herself into the air hoof forest, spinning in a spiral. And that's when things got awesome! We had this huge epic fight! She then turned to the lids. It was missing a suspiciously high-shaped chunk from the left side of his face. It was awesome, wasn't it? The lids nodded enthusiastically, rather from agreement or terror. One couldn't be sure. I have to say, the most impressive feat was the way Twilight handled herself, Rarity commented, fanning herself with her magic. She went one-on-one with the brute. Sigh, Orcus, dear. Orcus called it to one massive, corpulent riding fist and turned away, embarrassed. Anyway, she squared off with him and actually held her own long enough for us to get there and finally wear him down. Honestly, though, real hero of the day, Applejack said, hefting Fluttershy out of the mud, was this gal here.
Oh, no, no. You girls did all the work. I just spoke to him is all. It was nothing.
Horse fires! We were pulled down on our legs, and you suddenly showed up and taught the old demon. That ain't nothing! Yes, dear, I was at Castle Point. Without you, the fighting could have gone on for a lot longer. Some of us maybe even lost our lives. You mastered yourself the whole affair with nothing more than a few roses and some property damage. She then turned to the hulking crimson nightmare behind her, was slowly as thumbs and awkwardly stuffing its great coven clothes. Each of which was bigger than Big Mac. You are a dear, by the way, for taking the time to clean all this up for us. Orcus waved his hands and gave a great shipping hair. Somewhat spoiled by the twisted nest of decayed fangs and tusks that made up the demon's mouth. It has been a trying day. Twilight sighed, nuzzling Luna's stomach. Then she leaned back up and looked at Luna. I'm just glad you're okay. It was at this point Orcus spoke. He didn't quite speak, of course. It was much more that he opened his great maw, and a hurricane's force of screaming 1,000 damned souls formed discordant notes. Was served as the purposes of speech. Still, speaking is as a good descriptor as any. Orcus called gently.
Girls, if I may, I would like to speak to Luna.
The group nodded, and watched as the path between the two demigods was cleared. Twilight got to all fours and patted Luna gently on the back. Luna did not speak, merely stared up at the great red fiend. Orcus moved forward to the space the 5 ponies had vacated and squatted down. He visited in an oddly nervous manner. Of course, when a nervous cult visits, it did cause a small tidal wave of rotting wine-colored flesh to roll across its body.
I realize this may be awkward for you, but I know I have done you wrong in the past. I know an apology will not make up for my behavior, but I want to make one anyway.
Orcus reached up and began rubbing the back of his neck.
I realize now that I caused much pointless suffering in my life, both to others and myself. Fluttershy made me realize that I didn't have to be that way. Do you have any idea how liberating that is?
His voice broke into a horrifying mess of jagged cavity-filled, knife-like teeth and a rough facility of a doofy, relieved grin.
I realized it was pointless to spend an eternity desiring to crush joy and beauty from life simply because of the way I was born. I have an eternity, Luna, to do whatever I want. I can paint or write poetry. I always had a soft spot for poetry, you know. It may seem like something odd, but oh well, it doesn't matter. I just want to tell you that you, nor any living creature, any longer have to fear me. I know this is hard to accept, and I and my servants shall return to Tartarus as soon as we repair the damage we have done. We shall not blight you with our presence for much longer. But Luna, before I leave, there is something I must ask you.
Orcus then stood, his terrible height. He opened his arms wide, and Luna was struck with a horrifying panic. Up to this moment, she was certain this was nothing more than some terrible, terrible nightmare brought on by bad tea before bed. But the great hulking monster right there in front of her, suddenly standing like that, reminded her this was no dream. Luna began to move, trying to get to her feet, trying to fly.
Luna, will you accept my friendship?
And then, faster than any counter serpent, Orcus swept Luna up into a crushing bear hug. Oh, it was horrifying. The predigested slime soaked Luna's coat, and the heat of Orcus's infernal body turned the cavern of flesh Luna was trapped in into a humid pit that smelled and felt like a swamp in the middle of the day. She tried to wriggle free, but there was just so much of Orcus to swim through. She managed to surface for air, and turned to scream at the demon to release her when, oh by the stars, Orcus was crying! Well, at least this was he assumed. The horrible oily pits that surged at his eyes stared into the middle distance as putrid green flames dribbled out of the void and down his cheeks like slime, leaving caustic apples and burns in their wake. Orcus's entire face twisted as he closed his great lidless eyes and gave a tired, relieved smile.
Thank you,
he whispered, just loud enough that everyone within 600 feet could hear it clearly. Orcus then gently placed her down and released her. Thick, rubbly strands of slime hung between them as Orcus stood. One snapped and slapped Luna in the chest. As he didn't seem to respond, as he continued to stare off into the void. Well, Twilight said, approaching Luna, another caution in her overall tone of her voice. Luna's shrunken mouth, a bug-eyed stare, wasn't exactly comforting. It looks like we all learned a valuable lesson about the power of friendship. She paused in front of Luna, her horn glowing as a quill and parchment drifted from behind her back. Luna? Would you like to do the honors? Luna slowly swung her head to look at Twilight, then at the parchment. Realization then slunk in. Then Luna watches her eyes pupils shrink to pinpricks, and her mouth opened to snarl. No! Luna shouted, slamming her two front hooves to the ground, splattering blood everywhere. No! No, no, no! She began scrambling to her feet, in a smashing flurry of motion, barely steadying herself, then turned to hiss at Twilight. Every pony on this forsaken rock is fucking inside! And with that, Luna gave a solar flare of silver light, and with a flash, a percussive clap of thunder, a shockwave of hot, heavily flavored mud. She vanished, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Twilight wiped the mud from her eyes and blinked, finding a black-scorched crater where the princess had been. She turned to her friends, jaw hanging open and her eyes quivering. They were all standing around, trying to find something to look at in confusion. Orcus was desperately trying to hide himself in the folds of flesh where his neck should have been. Well, was it something I said? Twilight asked, almost on the verge of tears. Nah, sugar cube, Applejack said while walking forward. Luna's just had a real stressful day. I'll buzz you a good night's rest and she'll be back here apologizing. She grabbed Twilight in a big old hug. Everything will be right come morning. Just wait. Soon, the other four were around Twilight, ending their lips in a hug and their murmurs of agreement. After the temperament moment had passed, the six untangled. Thanks, girls, Twilight said, smiling. She stood, resisting the urge to shake herself dry, and get her friends covered with more mud. Then suddenly, her face dropped and she smacked herself in the face. What's the matter, dear? I forgot to ask her about that howling coming from Canterlot this morning. The other chuckled. I'm telling you, Rainbow Dash said as he looked in the air. Two hydras, fighting! And with that, she began to wave her forearms in a snake-like motion, while bouncing her hooves in mock combat. Oh! Orcus said, in surprise. We assumed it was our sister, Mishka, the wolf spider. Flee from Tartarus as well, and come to join us in our conquest!
Wait, you have a sister?
It's complicated. The doors leading to Luna's bedroom blasted open, with a deafening crack of thunder and light, sending splinters and bits of grass flying into the room beyond. Luna stood, arcs of lightning rolling off of her. Her mane, returning to a more calm celestial blue, writhed around her head like snakes of a Medusa. Her armor hung in tatters off her body, was rippled and shuddered with each billowing breath. Each breath came out of a hole as of her face in a great huff, more like an enraged bull than a pony princess. And her eyes, consumed with a glowing white light, pulsed in rhythm with her enraged huffs. After a few moments, breathing slow and hair began to fall into a more traditional flow, although still in wild, indivisible strands. The glow, with a final pulse, faded from her eyes. Luna closed her eyes, let out a shuddering sigh, and opened them, looking into the room beyond. There, sitting at her coffee table, was her sister, Celestia. Celestia's face was, for a split longer at least, hanging wide in shock. The emotions on her face changed rapidly at that point. Hurt, shame, indecision, determination, then finally, the eternal calm. Luna's stare remained unchanged. It bore straight to her sister, hard and condemning. Luna's eternal stoicism was somewhat marred. Then, the corner of her mouth turned up. I tried to warn you. Luna let out a deathly howl and hurled herself at her sister. I'm sorry. I broke. Luna's bedroom was a wreck. Of her bed and coffee table, nothing existed save for a mangled mattress. Ash and thousands of splinters embedded a fraction of this in the sound stone in the rough shape of the shield Celestia had thrown out to defend herself. Along the walls was a series of cracked outlines, roughly in the shape of Luna's bookshelves, and beneath them, the remains of said shelves. Luna had at least the presence of mind to dump the books aside before hurling them at her sister. Anyone could see at this as if they wanted, particularly since one of the massive metal doors was barely attached to the frame, and the other was 20 feet away, lying what was left of the floor. Crumpled around was left on Luna's writing desk. Of course, no one was around to, given they all fled the wing when every single piece of glass shattered simultaneously. It had been a long night for Everypony. The two sisters sat on the aforementioned mattress. The younger curled against the older, and was currently using her magic to guide a brush through the younger's blue mane, violently teeming it after letting it run wild for some time. Celestia was having a bit more trouble with the task than she normally would. It was hard to see around the bruised flesh swelling around her left eye. Luna seemed much better off, all things considered, although the fur beneath her eyes was matted, and dark with a steady stream of tears.
Feel better?
Celestia asked. It was the first time either had communicated in anything other than blood-bursting screams or calling coos since Luna had come back.
Yes. No, I don't! I understand. I failed you once again, sister. I should have kept better track of you. Even when I knew you might hurt yourself, I couldn't make time to try and make myself clearer. I'm sorry.
There was a long silence.
What now? What now? What do we do now, sister, that we are no longer needed?
Celestia snorted. Luna turned and glared at her over her shoulder.
I'm sorry, Luna, but it's such a silly question. When we were young, we were heroes. We saved the world from creatures like Orcus and Discord. Yet now people laugh at the idea, and veterinarians stop demonic invasions, single herds with doe eyes and tea. If we are not here to protect our little ponies, and our guidance is merely charmingly antiquated, what purpose do we serve? What use is a goddess in a world of heroes?
Celestia sat quietly for some time, continuing to press Luna's hair.
Luna, all that time ago, do you remember that goddess we had, when we were still young, out in the mountains beyond the reach of Discord? Do you remember it? Yes. Do you remember the garden I tended there? All the trouble I had with aphids and caterpillars? All the hours I spent pulling up weeds? Do you remember how the garden looked? It was a pretty garden. Yes, but it was tireless, thankless work. You pull up one weed and a butterfly nest on the other end of the garden, unnoticed until its spawn eats away at the roses. What if I told you, Luna, I found another way to garden? What if there was a way to grow flowers so that they pulled up the weeds around them, to where they brushed off the aphids and killed the caterpillars? Oh, and Luna, what if I told you that growing plants this way made them stronger and more beautiful, more vibrant than simply grooming them and watering them? Do you think I should keep up my tireless, thankless job of picking up weeds if it was better for us to both grow them this way? I guess not. But then what? My question still stands. There's always the sun and moon,
Luna snorted.
Those rose before our births and will rise after we fall. If anything, we are in danger. The whims of one mare could spell eternal night or everlasting noon if the roles are reversed. Not of course, Luna said, smirking. If the trees and hills could move the sun and moon on their own. Perhaps because the sun, or errant moon, thought them to think and work for themselves. Duty and purpose are not things that exist, Luna. One is a romanticization of the most tragic needs of the moment. The other is just a fancy way of saying choice. When Discord made it rain blood or cherry juice, depending on its mood, and played war games with 5 live armies, yes, we were needed. And recognizing that, we found purpose. But that is not the age we live in anymore. What do we do now, Luna? We do whatever pleases us. You are right. As they become heroes, we will have less needs for goddesses, which in turn relieve us of that burden. It's not like we vanished then, though. Then we are free to choose what we are to them. Princesses, sages, generals, scholars, wizards, poets, friends.
Celestia gave a playful tug of Luna's hair.
Lovers.
Luna replied with a half-hearted kick of her hind leg.
It's not like we are useless to them yet. We can still aid them in the battle against the dark powers of the world, and they still look up to us as ruler. Although, it's been something I've been trying to curb.
Celestia then stopped for a moment, and Luna turned to look at her sister with a faint impish grin.
The old pre-Hurricane republics of the Pegasi fascinated me as a child. Do you think Twilight would make a fascinating praetor? It seems like something her entire life has been setting her up for.
Celestia studied Luna for a second, the grin getting wider. Luna didn't know if it was relieving or made it worse.
Just a thought, sister.
Luna turned back to face forward. She let out a stutter and sigh. Tears began to fall again, but they were a relief time, not a weight. Luna didn't speak after that, and continued to brush her sister's hair. After a silence, Luna spoke again.
So, sister, what were you exactly? All day, I mean. Oh, by the moon, you have no idea! Orcus breaks free, and suddenly every other nation in the world forgets its treaties with Equestria. I have been running everywhere putting out fires. I spent most of the mid-morning reminding the patriarch of the dragonflight who exactly saved him as an egg the last time Orcus walked the earth, so I could get his help evacuating the eastern seaboard if Orcus couldn't be stopped at Ponyville. Then, I spent a wonderful time explaining to the Griffith's ambassador that, yes, we were aware of his Imperial Majesty the Star's secret unicorn hunting unit, and that, yes, I really was willing to pay that much for them if they could kill a hitless half as well as they kill dummies dressed like shining armor. I imagine His esteemed Holiness was not pleased when he got that message, and I'm sure I will hear no end of it. Then there was warning twilight of what was about to happen, and make sure that they had the elements at hand, and that they had the vehicles and mazes ready to evacuate Ponyville should things turn south. And I still can't believe Fluttershy talked down Orcus of all things. I was honestly betting they'd just kill him, or seal him up in Tartarus again. And then, finally, I had to stop doing all that every 5 minutes or so to tell the latest two-bit conjurer who happened to read the ley lines that morning that, yes, I was in fact aware of a powerful, malignant, magical force to the south, and that, yes, it was handled, and that, no, I would not be their great and powerful help. Trixie! Hey, you leave Trixie out of this! Celestia sighed again. It has been an exhausting day. Why did you ask? What? Did you think I was getting a Huffakir? Luna gave a massive toothy grin as her chuckling tapered off into a nasally squeak. Celestia stared, shocked wide-eyed at Luna, since she began laughing, and then kept laughing, building in volume until she was crying and letting out great, high-gasping fits of laughter. Still laughing, she tackled Luna with her forehose, falling into her and hugging her tightly, as the two of them laid on that ruined bed, laughing in the wee hours before dawn. And this writer has laughed too. Oh, God. Oh. Isn't any curious that we started this whole entire 3-day thing with a really somber story all about how Celestia went to planning and how much Celestia depended on Luna, to where we see how the two depended on each other, and then we move right on to the... Wait. One story was focused on Celestia. One story was focused on the two sisters, as in a time between sun and night, and then the night. Honestly, I did not plan it that way, but still. I want to start out this review by asking one simple question. Do you think that this is how Metropolis, New York, or, say, Central gets when the latest bad guy attacks? Or even, say, various places in Japan? Especially during Sentai season? I mean, I would like to think so. I would like to think that somewhere in Metropolis, the scientist sees this invading alien horde, and he goes, "Oh, yes, at last, I will be able to..." No, bullcrap! And then sees a blue blur flying into the sky to take down the monstrosities, and he's busy thumbing his hands against the table, going, "Darn you, Superman! Darn you! Can you at least save one of the specimens?" Or, say at one point in Star Labs, Cisco's working on his computer, he's thinking to himself, "Oh man, I love it, Barry would just let one of these guys stay here in the lab so I can take a good look at them and their cool tech or something." Well, I'm a fan of the Flash TV series. Shut up. I love it. Or, even in Japan, giant monster attacks. It's some sort of ancient evil being that could really solve the foundations of life and death. And just as this big army is ready to fight, they're ready to strike, suddenly they hear, "SPD emergency!" Then the army's like, "Oh!" And surprisingly, for a fic that's very comical centric, it does make you think and does have a lot to say, even if you don't realize it yet. Everything here flows perfectly. The punchlines are set up well. As a matter of fact, it does follow the rule of 3. You know, the classic rule, if you do something, you gotta keep it to 3 times, and it does. First, it starts off by being normal twice. You know, the setup. Luna sees army, Luna talks about Orcus, then kind of find out it's Ponyville. Which, I need to remind you, makes me feel like I could write this as a Superman story. Right? Oh my gosh. General! Mr. President! Yes, Commander? There's a giant monster going across New Jersey at this very moment! Really? What city is going to attack? Metropolis! Oh, don't mind that. Or even Teen Titans. Somebody talks about Jump City and they say, oh, it's Jump City, and let the Titans handle it. I just also, and then the second one starts out with another beat, then Ponyville, boom. Then, okay, danger, Ponyville. Then it comes to the last one and it changes. It doesn't mention Ponyville, but sets up a really nice, good long punchline by first setting up a beautiful way of just being quiet, and then, boom, the surprise, which in the end makes the punchline all the funnier. It was some a really good setup, and for some odd reason, I want this to be an episode. Or heck, even a Equestrian Girl thing where Sunset expects something bad happening and sees something coming and she suddenly realizes that it's nothing, really. I just love this feeling. And what's more, I also love seeing Luna's emotions. And this gives us a chance to see the true differences between the two sisters. While Celestia is more calm and collected, Luna, of course, is the younger sister. But then again, I've always felt that while Celestia is more of the ruler, the thinker, and the maze caster, it's Luna that's the warrior. It's Luna that's on the front lines. I guess it comes from my old royalty days where I know that that most people, when they think of royalty, when they give birth, they usually say it's the heir and the spare. In this case, Celestia is the heir and Luna, well, is the spare. I have to wonder if maybe if they wanted to invoke that, you could say that Luna has that mindset and Luna's ready to fight and throw herself into battle. Celestia can fight, but she chooses not to. Instead, prefers to think about her plans. Still would love to have Celestia fight once in a while, but even when it came to crystals, I saw the reasons why. And I love how the main six appeared, and we see that, yes, they are badasses. But this fic does give one lots of room to think. And there are several different messages you could take from this fic. Like, for instance, this is why we have heroes. This is kind of the point of heroism. This is why they can send Twilight and the others out to save the Crystal Empire without an army. Because that's who they are. That's their point. They're meant to stop the problem before they can rely on an army. What's the point of sending an army out against Discord when he could just as easily turn them all into little bunny rabbits? What's the point of sending an army against Sombra when his ghostly form apparently can stop you from casting magic? When you've got 6 brave heroes right there. I mean, I can almost see this kind of happening in Gotham City. You know, Commissioner Gordon tells Batman, Batman, there's a crime in Two-Face's causing a problem. Maybe you should go investigate it. I will, Commissioner. Then Commissioner Gordon turns towards Bullock and goes, all right, Bullock, line them up and bring out the brewskis. We're having a party! Because at that point, when you got a band of heroes, you should know by now that everything's going to be okay. That's what heroes do. They find third ways. They find alternate means of taking things out. They're protectors. They're guardians. That's what they do best. To further prove my point, I can't help but think of this scene in a Batman issue that always rings out in my head. This cop walks out with his wife in the middle of the night in Gotham City and says, "This is where Batman patrols every night. Criminals would have to be crazy to attack. We'll be safe." And that kind of rings true for a lot of moments. And that's what I feel like that this story proves. That these guys knew they were safe. They knew they were protected. Also, that's kind of another big point. How many of you guys have watched Camelot? In that movie, there's a scene where Arthur is walking around town on his horse, and suddenly this peasant comes up with all these keys, and he goes, "See, here, King Arthur, these are the keys to our homes. We used to lock up every night, but now we don't, because now we live under the protection of King Arthur." You have to know at some point that when you have a hero that's ready to watch over you, we've got it. As Luna pointed out, we live in a time where veterinarians can win with doe eyes and tea. And that's something you gotta remember. These mares have proven themselves time and time again that they are more than just a sports star, a farmer, a seamstress, a veterinarian, and a clown, and the most powerful maids on the planet. Hey, that could be said of all of the different alternate verse groups. They are more than just their ragtag team of misfits. They've become heroes, banded together because of harmony. Because each is something special and more in their field. Fluttershy's not just a veterinarian. She's a man who can out-wrestle a bear if he wanted to, and stare down a cockatrice. Verity's not just a fashionista. She's a mare who could probably balance as much stuff as Twilight can. Applejack's not just a farmer. She's a gal who goes through fire swamps for breakfast and handles a chimera every time she wants to deliver a pass. Rainbow Dash is the fastest Pegasus on the planet and can prove it. And Twilight, well, Twilight's Twilight. And then there's Pinky. A good leader should, and I think this brings out a perfect point for Celestia. A good leader should know her resources. A good leader should know what she's capable of. Which would you rather do? This Vic asks. Send out the army against Metallo? And risk losing hundreds of lives? Or sink the big blue guy with a S on his chest? I guess I'm wearing a Superman shirt right now. Do you send the army against the giant monster knowing that their weapons would be failures and that the giant monster would easily crush them? Or do you rely on those guys dressed in multicolored spandex? It's not spandex! Sorry. And those really cool suits to take down the bad guys and stand in a cool pose while they expose their heavens at their backside. That's the point. This fic also brings out another interesting moral. What's the point of us now that there are heroes born? I kind of addressed this in my own fic, Still Needed, about what is Celestia's point now that Twilight graduated, Cadence is married, and Luna's back where she belongs. Yeah, the two are still needed. Rule to fight the battles that the other girls can't handle, to stop things off screen, or even take care of all the military business. They now have a team of heroes at their side. Their time has passed. Going back to the DC metaphor, if you want, Celestia and Luna are the Justice Society. Their time has passed. Their duties are over. It's time to pass life on to a new generation. It's time for Celestia and Luna to let the new take over the old. Their roles are done. It's time for them to become guidance. I also love what Celestia is thinking. Yeah, they could still be there for him, but this time, for now, the princesses have become old. It's time to let them take care of themselves. This is one of the big things I've noticed. Somebody asked me about Grand Ruler, and Harmony asked me about Grand Ruler was. What was the difference? And I keep pointing this out about Celestia. Celestia is acting like the guardian who realizes her time has passed. And it's time for you mares to learn to stand up for yourselves. Learn to fight alone. Learn to stand on your own two hooves. I'm no longer needed. It's time for you to fight. Learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. Without me. It's time for me to guide you and not be some sort of pony who does everything for you. It's time for you to become the heroes that you need to be. And I think that's, in the end, one of the better messages of this story. Plus, there's also that really fun little bit where we see what Celestia really does do while the other heroes do on their job. File out paperwork and do all the boring stuff. I mean, yeah, it would be funny, but really, guys, do you want to spend half an episode watching Celestia tell every single ambassador, look, it'll be fine, I've got a team of badasses that can help, that can save the day. Look, it'll be fine. No, I don't need you. Okay, write down the evacuation plans. Do we really need to see that? Do we really need to bother ourselves with the day-to-day activities of boring life when we could be watching everybody else kick some ass? I don't know about you people, but I'd rather be watching the ass kicking brought forth by the 6 mayors. But that's just me. That's what this fic brings to the table, and it does it beautifully. Through comedy, soft-spoken word, and just a general all-area fun. But sadly, we'll have to leave this lighthearted mood for something more serious. Monday, here's something else. The Canterlot wedding. A happy festive for all. But for 6 mayors, they feel something hardening in their hearts. A mistake that they need to recover. While some apologies were said, what goes on in the background speaks volumes. Coming up next, post-nuptials. I'll see you there.